Lesson 1. Feelings and moral decision making. Feelings as instinctive response to moral dilemmas. Some ethicists hold that moral judgments at their best should also be emotional. Emotions can be rational in being based at least sometimes on good judgment about how well a circumstance or agent accomplishes appropriate objectives. Feelings as obstacle to moral decision making. Feelings and emotions can become obstacle or impediments to becoming ethical. So it's because sometimes we base our decisions from our emotions or feelings that can affect our right decisions. For example, if we feel bad, then we also act bad things or act badly. Emotions can be a hindrance in our decisions when we base on our emotions. Lesson 1. Feelings and moral decision making. A. Record a personal situations wherein students utilize varying immediate responses to moral dilemmas. So, an example of a moral dilemmas is having to choose between career or passions. So, students has a different answers, decisions, and opinions in this situation, whether they choose career, that is a practical approach where you compensated in terms of respect, recognition, and money, eventually leading to take a mark because of what you do. Or at some point, students might choose passion because passion is the path or skills that supports you to attain your calling. S. Judge your peers' own moral behavior in terms of planning and execution of important moral experiences. Based on some of my peers' own moral behavior in terms of planning and execution of important moral experiences, is that I can say that all of my peers is not fully matured in their decision making, because all of their decision making is their based it of what they are, or asa sila komportable sa ilang decision. K. Check real life cases against the 7-step model. Step 1. Identify the decision. You realize that you need to make a decision. Step 2. Gather relevant information. Step 3. Identify the alternatives. Step 4. Weigh the evidence. Step 5. Choose among alternatives. Step 6. Take actions. Step 7. Review your decision and its consequences.
Hi, good day. I'm Melvin Imontes, given the task to report about ethical subjectivism. Ethical subjectivism is a theory that explores the nature of ethics. It suggests that when we make moral statements, we are expressing our personal attitudes, opinions, our preferences, rather than stating objective truths. So in other words, moral judgments are influenced by our individual beliefs, emotions, and the value of our society, making them subjective and varying from person to person or culture to culture. So let's move on to meta-ethical theory. Meta-ethical theory examines the nature of moral judgments and how we determine what is right or wrong. It suggests that the truth or falsehood of ethical statements depends on the feelings, attitudes, or standards of individuals or groups. This is why when it comes to controversial ethical topics, we often encounter opposing viewpoints as different people hold different perspectives on the matter. The first group of people strongly believes that a particular action is immoral. They feel that these actions goes against what they consider to be right and ethical, violating the standards they hold dear. On the other hand, there's a second group who firmly believes that the same action is actual moral. They argue that it aligns with their understanding of what is right and just, and they see it as a positive and acceptable choice. Now, there's a third perspective called ethical subjectivism. This viewpoint suggests that when it comes to morality, there are no objective facts that everyone must agree upon. Instead, people's moral judgments are influenced by their personal beliefs, experiences, and cultural backgrounds. Essentially, the idea is that there isn't a universal right or wrong when it comes to morality. It's a matter of personal interpretation and individual values. Each person's opinions on what is moral or immoral may differ, and there isn't an absolute truth or fact that can settle that debate definitively.
Good day everyone. So I will be tackling about the analysis of ethical subjectivism. But before that, let me first introduce myself. My name is Jera Katipay from BS Ed Sciences. So ethical subjectivism was discussed by the previous reporter, and to sum up, ethical subjectivism means that our moral opinions vary from person to person. This means that what is morally right or wrong is determined by individual subjectivity rather than objective criteria such as reason, logic, or empirical evidence. So ethical subjectivism allows us to think for ourselves because it implies that we need not agree with culture or society. Therefore, atong moral statements are expressions of our preferences or attitudes. For example, miingon ko nga, killing is wrong. Pero na po'y miingon nga, killing is not wrong kung deserve na niya. So, what I said is not a statement of objective fact, but rather an expression of personal opinion or preference. Kay, as unique individuals as we are, different individuals may have different opinions or attitudes towards killing, depending on their cultural background, upbringing, personal experiences, and other factors. Therefore, instead nga mosunod or mo-agree ra ka with culture or society, there's ethical subjectivism is your opinion or your personal perspectives. So, it says here that it provides a weak foundation for dealing with topics like drug addiction, bullying, slavery, racism, and discrimination. Why? Nga naman nga weak foundation ang ethical subjectivism in dealing with these matters. So, for the reason that if mingon kong drug addiction is good, so there is no right or wrong in that statement, kay pwede ramang kong mo reason up, pwede ramang kong ingon nga we have different opinions, we are unique individuals, walay magbuot na ko. Kay lagi, ang ethical subjectivism kay our own opinion, wala tayo gisunod nga objective criteria. So, when we know for a fact nga kanang drug addiction is bad. So, if sundo nato ang ethical subjectivism, niya magdeal tag topics like this, addiction, discrimination, bullying, and etc., more likely, atong judgment could have negative results. Kay wala man tay laing i-consider, wala tay laing wala tay laing i-consider ang atong opinion lang or ang ato rang perspective. So, according to ethical subjectivism, when we express one's actions as evil, we merely say we have negative feelings toward the deeds. The moral judgments we make do represent the truth. If ethical subjectivism is correct, then each of us is infallible in our moral judgments as long as we are speaking sincerely. So just like sa akong example kanina, if maingon kong drug addiction is good, so it's my moral judgment. Therefore, it's the truth. So, pada ba na? Sakto ba na siya? So, in this case, kung sakto ang ethical subjectivism, so, perfect ditang tanan. So, dili, no? Okay, there's no right or wrong man. So, if we make our moral judgments as long as we are speaking sincerely, okay ra there is ethical subjectivism. Bisan unsa imong isulti, basta sincere, okay ra. Kay infallible naman ta, incapable of making mistakes or wrong, we would never fail, always effective kita diring dapita. So nya, as human beings, dili gud ta masayop, dili gud ta mo make og mga mistakes. So, example, si A, atong ibalang si A kay si Ara, X is si Sander, and B is Bea. So, kung maingon si Ara, si Sander morally acceptable na siya. Imingon pa si Bea, kana Sander kay morally unacceptable man na siya. So, they are disagreeing. Their statements are disagreeing. So, kinsay sakto na lang duha? Si Ara or si Bea? Kung atong i-apply ang ethical subjectivism, walay sakto, wala pa'y sayop nilang duha. Kay lagi, ang ethical subjectivism, imuha ng opinion, imuha ng judgment, walay magbuot nimo. So, it could have dangerous implications in moral education. Kaya nga naman, kaya instead nga i-consider nimo ang other things before mo make a judgment, or instead of developing your sensible and proper feelings, dili na lang. Kaya mag-ethical subjectivism ra ka. You're gonna simply follow your personal feelings and emotions. So basically, medyo selfish ning sa ethical subjectivism. Kay imo ra jud, you're just gonna follow your heart and do what you feel. So, in conclusion, according to James Rachels, ethical subjectivism is the idea that our moral opinions are based on our feelings and nothing more. On this view, there is no such thing as right or wrong or objective. So that would be all for ethical subjectivism. Let us now move on to motivism.
Hi, my name is Mark III Asbuyubay. So today I'm going to discuss about the emotivism. So first is that question, what is emotivism? So emotivism is a moral statement just express our feelings and ensure that all opinions are equally valid. So emotivism is to ensure that all opinions are equally valid even though your thoughts are not deep. So it is a moral statement to express our feelings and ideas. So back to the discussion. So emotivism, it was developed by the American philosopher Charles L. Stevenson. It has been one of the most influential theories of ethics in the 20th century. So emotivism is an influential theories, and in 20th century. It is actually the most popular form of non-cognitivism, meta-ethical theory that claims that ethical sentences do not convey authentic prepositions. So, according to emotivism, moral judgment are not statement of fact, but are mere expression of the emotion of the speaker, especially since they are usually feeling based. So, emotivism rather is a moral judgment are not statement of fact, but are mere expressions. So it is more about expressing your feelings and thoughts of the person who is talking. And logical positivism, so it claims that any legitimate truth must be empathically variable. According to emotivism, so utterances in ethics 8 no fact stating sentences. So they are not used to convey information. Instead, they have two entirely different purposes. So the first moral or the first one is the first moral sentence are used as means of influencing others' behavior. So ako daw, I'll be the one nga modala, then I will influence others. So that is the first moral sentences. For example, to say X is immoral. So it is equivalent to saying do not do X. So to say X is not, it is moral rather, is to say do X. So the second moral sentence are used to express. So the first one is to influence, but the second one is to express the speaker's attitude. The great example for this are the politicians, no? So they are the great speaker, and they are using kanibitang attitude. Okay, so X is moral merely means hooray for X. So X is immoral just means boo on X. So that is my report for today's video, and I will proceed. I will give the virtual floor to the next reporter. Thank you.
I am Ramilin Rubo, and I will be discussing about the evaluation of emotivism. It is barely sensible to base a moral theory on logical positivism. Logical positivism is self-refusing as the view is not self-verifiable by sense experience and thus would not be genuine truth claim on its own grounds. So, logical positivism is a philosophical position that emphasizes the importance of empiricism and verifiability in determining the truth value of statements. It asserts that only statements that can be empirically verified or confirmed through sense experience have meaning. So while those cannot be verified in this way are considered meaningless. However, basing a moral theory on logical positivism is problematic because logical positivism itself fails to meet its own criteria of verifiability through sense experience. So according to the logical positivist perspective, moral claims or theories that cannot be empirically verified wouldn't be considered meaningless. For example, if someone were to argue that it is morally wrong to lie, a logical positivist might argue that this statement is meaningless because it cannot be empirically verified. They would claim that since moral judgments cannot be reduced to empirical observations or sense experience, they lack meaning according to the logical positivist framework. Moving on, in denying moral truths and moral knowledge, emotivism seems to delineate what morality is instead of elucidating it. It is also unclear how the ethical code can be reasonably reducible to mere exclamations. Emotivism is a meta-ethical theory that asserts that moral statements do not express objective truths or convey knowledge about moral facts. Instead, according to emotivism, moral statements merely express the emotions, attitudes, or preferences of the speaker. For example, when someone says murder is wrong, they are not stating a fact that about the moral status of murder, but expressing their disapproval or condemnation of it. The criticism of emotivism lies in its tendency to deal with the concept of morality rather than clarifying it. So, by reducing moral statements to mere expressions of emotions or attitudes, emotivism disregards the possibility of moral truths or objective moral standards. So, it implies that moral judgments are merely subjective and lack any universal or rational basis. Emotivism suggests that in ethical disputes, we cannot appeal to reason but only to emotion. Emotivism also fails to distinguish moral judgment from mere expressions of personal preferences. Having a logical, positivist background, emotivism disregards moral truths. So, emotivism is a meta-ethical theory that proposes that ethical disputes cannot be resolved through rational argument but are instead based on emotional responses. One criticism of emotivism is that it fails to differentiate between moral judgment, which involve claims about right or wrong based on objective standards, and expressions of personal preferences, which are subjective and based on individual taste or desire. In other words, emotivism lumps together statements like murder is wrong with statements like I don't like broccoli, treating them as equivalent expressions of emotions or preferences. So, summary, emotivism suggests that ethical disputes are grounded in emotions rather than reason, fails to distinguish between moral judgment and personal preferences, and stems from a logical, positivist backgrounds that denies the existence of a moral truths. That's all. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I am Arjun Jicolanat and I'll be discussing feelings can help in making the right decision. These are situations in which our feelings and likings are relevant to the rightness of our decisions and actions. So feelings really helps a lot in making the right decision. Without feelings, we can possibly be doing the wrong decisions. Everything in life includes feelings. Also, decisions encompasses our feelings. So example of that is when we are getting or taking a course. So feelings are an important factor. Feelings are an important factor in making the right decision so that we can go on a right path. Next is ethics without feeling are also appears to go against Christian philosophy. Emphasis in love for love is basically a strong liking, desire, or emotion. So ethics is the study of what is morally right and wrong. So ethics and Christian philosophy's emphasis in love are intertwined for us to decide what is right and wrong. And one of them or they must not be against each other. Next is emotions are a crucial part of what gives life meaning and also play a guiding role in morality. So emotions are an important factor that gives life meaning. It gives life meaning in a way that we can express what we think, act, and feel through our emotions. It is said that emotions also play a guiding role in morality wherein we judge through our emotions of what is right and wrong. Next is the feelings or emotions involved in moral thinking should be anchored on careful consideration of a full range of right goals including altruistic ones. So this consideration also connects with our emotional reaction that provides to act ethically or moral and correct injustices including the altruistic ones. When we say altruistic, it refers to selfishness. So that's all for our discussion, and thank you.